Hello, everybody. My name is Jake Levine. I work in the White House Office of Energy and Climate Change, and I'm here with the Deputy Assistant to the President, Heather Zeichel, for Energy and Climate Change. And she just came out of a meeting with the President and a group of bipartisan senators to talk about comprehensive energy and climate legislation. And so I'm going to finish my very brief introduction and turn it over to Heather and see if she wants to give us a brief readout of that meeting, and then we'll jump into questions from you all.
Great, thanks Jake, and thanks to everybody for joining us this afternoon. As Jake mentioned, President Obama held a meeting today in the Cabinet Room with about 24 members of the United States Senate, both Democrats and Republicans, to talk about the importance of passing comprehensive energy and climate legislation this year. It was a very productive dialogue, a lot of new ideas and concepts about how we put together a path to get 60 votes in the Senate were discussed. I think the President left the meeting feeling very encouraged about our prospects for a victory later this summer in terms of getting a bill that allows us to reduce our dependence on foreign oil, create clean energy jobs, and transition to a clean energy economy. So with that, we will go on to take some of the questions from you today.
Thanks, Heather. So why don't we start along those lines and talk about some of the specifics of the energy bill. We've gotten a couple of questions from folks asking what it's going to look like. Jeff Young says, Ms. Zeichel, can you please comment on the administration's level of commitment to including a cap on carbon emissions in energy legislation? Will the president insist that an energy bill put a price or cap on carbon, or will he allow an energy-only approach? And then Josh Nelson sort of had a similar question. He says, the president's statement today said he believes the best way to transition to a clean energy economy is to put a price on carbon. But during the healthcare debate, he used a very similar language to describe his preference for a public option. Will the president insist that energy legislation he signs this year include a price on carbon?
Great questions, both of them. Thank you, both Jeff and Josh. I think what the president reiterated today and has had a consistent position on is the fact that we need to place a price on carbon pollution. Polluters need to pay for their pollution. He made it very clear that this price on carbon is important not only for us to be able to build this transition to a clean energy economy, but it's also something that we have heard time and time again from industry and from other supporters. They need the predictability, they need the certainty in the marketplace to be able to make the decisions that they need to make. Obviously the comprehensive approach that the president's been talking about, whether it was on the campaign trail or since he's been in office, is something that he remains very committed to. The energy and climate are two sides of the same coin, and both of those things need to go together hand in hand. At the same time, I think exactly how you iron out those details, how robust is that energy portfolio. We talked about things including a renewable electricity standard, more support for biofuels, continued domestic oil and gas production. But then on the cap, I think what was interesting about today's discussion was there are different ways that you might be able to achieve this objective. Some people have talked about economy-wide. There's also additional discussion about maybe just going after a stationary source only cap. And again, based on the discussion today, I think we feel good about opportunities to come together and find some common ground to pass the legislation this year.
Thanks. Maybe a follow-up to that question came in while you were speaking. Luke O'Neill asked, why won't the administration push for carbon fees with rebates instead of cap and tax when we know carbon fees will be more effective and efficient?
I think what the president has supported has been something called a cap and trade system, similar to the good work that Chairman Waxman and other members in the House were able to produce with a comprehensive bill in the House last summer when that passed. We also have a number, as I said earlier, of ideas about how to put that price on carbon pollution in the Senate. I think many people have looked at different ways to do that, but what's important is making sure that we are protecting consumers in the process and making sure that we are protecting the manufacturing base. And we think that there are ways to do that through a comprehensive approach.
Great, thanks. There's a lot of traffic on sort of maybe just a background question, which might be helpful to spend a brief amount of time on. Laura D. Simone asked, please define clean energy.
Very good question. I think, obviously there are a lot of probably differing opinions on this. I think the administration as a whole thinks about clean energy as something that has a low carbon profile, low emissions profile, low pollution profile. We have invested heavily in the administration in clean energy. I think the Recovery Act investments, the largest investment in American history, helped funnel a lot of dollars to what we would deem clean energy investments. That's money to build more wind turbines and solar panels, additional funding to build out smart grid technologies. And then the last piece of this is, it's not all about what you're doing to generate electricity, but also what you're doing to save electricity. I would also put in the clean energy bucket. Investments in energy efficiency, whether that's, to make your homes and businesses more energy efficient, or, we're spending a lot of money and creating a lot of jobs to build batteries for the new, more efficient cars and trucks of the future. So again, I think that's another example of how our administration defines clean energy.
Thanks, Heather. There's been a fair amount of traffic on the oil spill in the Gulf, and I think that's something that's on a lot of people's minds. Eric Holland asked if we can cut our dependence on foreign oil, how can we make the transition more quickly from oil to renewable sources?
Great question, and I think having actually just returned from the Gulf yesterday, the president spoke directly to this in his Oval Office address, that what's happening now in the Gulf is certainly a reminder of our need to break our dependence on fossil fuels, and I think that theme again also came up in the bipartisan meeting with the senators. The administration as a whole has really aggressively pursued policies to reduce our dependence on oil. One of the biggest opportunities for us is obviously to invest in the efficiency of our fleet of automobiles, our cars and trucks. And in the early days of the administration, the first year of the administration, we successfully brokered an agreement to aggressively increase efficiency standards for models year 2011 to 2016 for cars and trucks. So we're going to be by about 4% annually increasing the efficiency of those vehicles, thereby saving actually 1.8 billion gallons of oil over the lifetime of the program. So it's a terrific example of what this administration is doing to cut our dependence on oil. Obviously something that plays very closely into not only our environmental goals, but also our national security and strategic goals.
Great. Let's switch gears a little bit here and maybe talk about some of the different sources of energy that are on the table. There have been a fair amount of questions about nuclear energy, and one sort of straightforward one comes from Adam Dorr. He asks, will nuclear energy be part of the clean energy mix supported by this administration?
Well, as to quote the president's science advisor, Dr. John Holdren, he has a quote: "There are no silver bullet solutions for our nation's energy challenges, only silver buckshot." And I think what he means is that we have to invest in a number of different energy technologies and energy sources in order to achieve energy security, but also ultimately our climate objectives. And the president feels strongly that nuclear power is part of what constitutes a secure energy portfolio. The administration granted a tax credit for the development of a new facility. We'll be breaking ground for the first nuclear facility in about 30 years. here domestically, and those are not only creating more carbon-free energy, but also a lot of jobs in the process, which is obviously front and center on the president's mind. Some questions have come in about waste and what we're doing there, and I think what's important to flag is that the administration has created and established a blue ribbon panel commission to look at back-end waste issues and make some recommendations about how best to handle those, both environmentally and from a proliferation perspective.
Great. Another topic that's come up quite a bit is geothermal. Michael Bunting asked, why do we not pursue more geothermal energy resources? We have plenty of areas that this would be applicable and could tie into the grid easily.
Great question, Michael. I think again, getting back to the no silver bullet, obviously we are looking at a number of different energy sources, and geothermal is one of those. But in order to do that, we need to create the right set of incentives and policies around that. One of the things that has been so successful about the Recovery Act is a tax credit program. So through the Recovery Act investments, we are seeing more geothermal energy projects come online. The other thing, the other added bonus of passing comprehensive energy and climate legislation is that we would hope to include a renewable electricity standard, which says a certain amount of renewable energy comes from, or a certain percentage of energy comes from renewable sources by a date certain. And the more predictability we can create through a renewable electricity standard, the better off we all will be, and will create a better push and pull for geothermal energy sources.
And in that same question, Michael sort of raised the question of the grid, and some other folks were talking about the smart grid and the nation's transmission apparatus. And Michelle Barone-Berry asked, we know our electrical grid is antiquated. Will this be the initial #1 job creator for our country? And then she says, to follow up on my first question, in reference to rebuilding our electrical grids and new job creation, what other sustainable jobs are in our future?
Great questions. I think the answer on the grid is twofold. One is, as you point out, yes, it is an antiquated grid, and we need to make some significant upgrades. The good news is that the Recovery Act also included additional funding for smart grid technology. These technologies will allow us to use devices to allow and ensure consumers can save money at home. So a big win for consumers because you're saving dollars, but also an environmental win because using less energy means a plus for the environment. We have through these investments in the Recovery Act and in the grid also seen a lot with job creation, which is incredibly important as well. And I think the last piece of this is just as the President has said before, building out the grid and bringing these new technologies online will ultimately be helpful because we need to be able to facilitate a situation where we have the vast windy areas of the plains. We're able to move, when we put up wind turbines and generate and create the electricity, we're able to move that into cities in more populated areas, and we're going to need the transmission lines to be able to carry that renewable electricity. So obviously that's a big priority for the administration.
Great, thanks. Another issue that we work on a lot here is efficiency, and there have been a number of questions on that front. Jim Michael asked, I would like to know why our government cannot get a program like Homestar passed that will create 300,000 jobs and create a new workforce in green technologies. And Ron Boudreau asked, will there be more encouragement from the government financially to citizens to put more energy efficiency in the home?
Great, and those two questions do go very well together. Homestar program is something that has been a priority for the administration, and luckily I'm happy to report that legislation is moving through Congress. It is something that has bipartisan support because I think, folks recognize whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, investing in energy efficiency is something that is good across the board. When you're able to install more energy efficient windows in your home, there are the jobs that have been created by the folks building the windows, but then you're also putting those more energy efficient windows in your home, which saves you as the consumer money. So again, I think the Homestar program is a win-win. The good news is that the legislation is moving through Congress, and we're going to continue to work with them to get this legislation to the president's desk.
Great. There have been some follow-up questions about the climate legislation, comprehensive energy bill, and they're sort of around cost. Eugene Wilson asked pretty simply, how much is cap and trade going to cost the taxpayers?
Well, one of the priorities for those folks working on the legislation, and obviously for the president, is that any comprehensive energy and climate legislation that we pass needs to make sure that we're able to protect consumers from any negative price impacts. And EPA and the Energy Information Administration has done a lot of modeling and to look at different impacts of different legislative proposals. And in fact, the legislation that passed the House, we're talking about the cost of a postage stamp a day in 2020. We have experience and have a lot of opportunity to work to create the right set of incentives that will protect consumers as we're looking at putting this price and capping carbon pollution.
Great, thanks. Some folks are joining and they just have some questions as well on what's going on down in the Gulf. Mm-hmm. And one question regarding the workers helping to clean up, Betty Feynman said, how about putting these out-of-work oil rig workers to work in a massive clean energy initiative? Great question. I think the answer to that is twofold. One, as the president has made clear, we want to make sure that all of those people impacted by the Gulf oil spill remain whole, and that's going to be a priority. You heard not long ago that the administration announced a $20 billion escrow account to help fund the claims process and help anybody impacted by the BP oil spill. The second piece of this, obviously, is what are we going to do to look at long-term recovery efforts for the Gulf and job opportunities. And again, this is a priority for the president and something that he spoke to during his Oval Office address. The Secretary of the Navy, Mabus, will be visiting the Gulf region this week, and this is something he's been tasked with, which is putting together a plan to ensure economic restoration and environmental restoration of the Gulf region. And this is something that he will be looking specifically at. What are we going to do to ensure ample job opportunities are available for anybody impacted by the spill? Great. An interesting question sort of on the financing side from Michael McHugh just asked, can we set up a national investment bank to fund alternative energy, green technology, and so on that will stimulate the economy and create jobs? Terrific question. I think as we are all thinking about the prospects and the work in the Senate to pass comprehensive energy and climate legislation, one idea that has been generated and has received some support is, what is the right mix, whether that's through tax credits or direct grant programs, to fund these important programs. And again, I think I've said it earlier, but the lessons learned from the Recovery Act program, where we have made these investments both in R&D, in manufacturing, and just some direct support for the renewables industry, have been a tremendous example of how we can invest in job creation and the transition to a clean energy economy. And those are certainly in line with what our goals for legislation would be. And then along the lines of increasing clean energy jobs, Laura Gilmore asked, how does the administration envision building a trained workforce to support this conversion to green energy?
Well, one of the programs is actually administered through the Department of Labor that's been a tremendous success, which is to provide grant programs, grant dollars for workforce training in green and clean energy technologies. So some of the things that we've been doing with that are, going to community college centers and helping set up programs so that, not only is it important to install the solar panels, but then, people need to be able to maintain them. And not only is it important to, be able to purchase a hybrid vehicle car, but people need to be able to work on those vehicles and understand the battery technology. So across the board, I think we see these investments in clean energy as opportunities to create jobs, and we are working through the Department of Labor on some specific programs to train the workforce of the future.
Great. Well, I think that we might have time for just one more.
Okay.
Question from Connor Dolan. From BJ Quinn on solar panels along those lines. Why have the solar panels not been reinstalled at the White House?
Great question. One of the things that obviously in addition to making these investments so that we can bring support for consumers and support for the industry, the federal government needs to be a leader in investing in clean energy technology. And last year, through the great work of the White House Council of Environmental Quality, we were able to get to implement a sustainability executive order. So across the federal government, all of the agencies are looking at what actions they can take to invest in energy efficiency and clean energy technologies. And one of those things, obviously, is for the White House to look at what we can do to invest in efficiency and save energy across the board. So those are all things that the entire federal government is doing because we want to be a leader in this area, and we have a true opportunity, and we intend to take that chance.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.